You're listening to the Mindful Mama podcast, episode 202. Today, we're talking about how to handle bedtime in a special on-air coaching call. Welcome to the Mindful Mama podcast. Here, it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have, and when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-Fields, Mindful Mama Mentor. I help smart, thoughtful parents stay calm so they can have strong, connected relationships with their children. I've been practicing mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting Membership, and I'm the author of Raising Good Humans, a mindful guide to breaking the cycle of reactive parenting and raising kind, confident kids. Welcome back, my friend. I am so excited for this conversation. You are going to learn so much. If you have ever struggled with bedtime, this is absolutely the episode for you to also share with your friends and anyone who has struggled with bedtime. I did a special on-air coaching call with Mindful Parenting member Brooke. And, it's about bedtime. She's exhausted. Her daughter's exhausted. Everyone's struggling. We talk about how to set limits without using threats. How does she get her own need for some downtime met? And you're going to learn these mindful parenting tools for peaceful bedtime. So I want you to listen for some important things that we talk about, how it's really important for us to not take on our kids' problems, how we are the grounding presence for our children, and how it makes such a huge difference to know that we are not alone. So valuable. And before we dive in, I want to let you know that I'm going to be doing a 10-day free training. It is coming right up as soon as this comes out. It's going to be January 13th through 24th, 2020. Crazy. Oh my gosh, 2020. So 13th through 24th, 2020. And you can join this free training at mindfulmamamentor.com/challenge. And it's a 10-day free challenge that will leave you calmer and closer to your child, leading to more cooperation and more fun. So don't miss it. Tell your friends about it. 10-day free challenge. It's going to be really wonderful. And at the end, we are going to be opening up the Mindful Parenting course, the Mindful Parenting membership. So make sure you are on the wait list to learn about that and get all the special bonuses that are coming along with that. Very exciting. We only open it up a few times a year, and this is one of the few times. So learn about that. And it all starts with the Calm and Connected Challenge. That's at mindfulmamamentor.com/challenge. Great. Now join me at the table as I talk to Mindful Parenting member Brooke. Brooke, thanks so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Well, I'm so glad to talk to you, and I've gotten to know you pretty well through the Mindful Parenting membership, and I'm excited to talk to you about you and and your 4-year-old darling.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the wins that are happening recently for you?
Well, first, I want to thank you for this opportunity because I couldn't be in more of agreement that when we share these stories and we put our experiences out there, that it really kind of has a bonding effect. I felt like I was on a complete island being a stay-at-home mom for several years before I found the My Mom and Mentor group. And even on the coaching call yesterday when we were kind of going through some things, and you were like, yeah, we're all nodding because yes, that experience, we all get it. We all know it. And even one of the other moms was like, yeah, you just saying that makes I knew that, but having that support and having someone else just to be like, yeah, you're not crazy, because I thought I was on crazy island. And just echoing the same thoughts and experiences is just very humbling. And so I think for me, that's the main reason I thought about doing this. And even after the call yesterday, I had another thing to thank you for is an amazing accountability buddy in Australia. I would have never met her. And she had, messaged me after the call and was like, hey, look at this. And I couldn't agree more. Like, this is happening with me too. And we're all on very similar paths. And again, so just having that connection, even though she's in Australia, is still, it helps me.
Yay.
So yeah.
Oh, yay.
But I think for me, really, and I just turned 40, and I became like,
happy birthday.
Thank you. I've been really reflective and contemplative over the last few months with some personal things, some grief, and some, and then, you know, turning the big 4-0 and kind of taking stock and the new year, I mean, the new decade and all that. And I really have needed to take a time to pat myself on the back and just realize that I've kind of focused on that self-compassion piece that was absolutely non-existent before. I'm definitely a recovering perfectionist, pessimist, you know, overachiever that so much more hard on myself than I ever would be on anyone. And so taking that time to be like, okay, you didn't get everything done. It's fine. You didn't do XYZ or, you know, whatever it is that I'm beating myself up about, to just
see, you're like, you're practicing that voice. You're practicing that self-compassion. It's starting to really, it's becoming more of a habit now.
Definitely. And and it really hit me when I saw and heard something that my daughter said. And I was like, oh my goodness. And it was kind of critical and for no reason. And I thought, wow, yeah, when it's reflected back at you in a way that you're like, oh, and then you catch yourself later going, oh, wow, that's where it's from. Oh my gosh. Like, yeah. So I really, in my past, it's always been the cycle of like, goal, achieve. I never really once stopping to say like, wow, look at what you just did, pat on the back. It was, what's the next thing? What's the next thing? When I get through that next step, I'll feel better. When I get through that next thing, then I'll be happy.
We never ever get to that place when we're in that cycle. That's the sad truth we have for you. And take it from Brooke, a recovering perfectionist in the way.
It is so true. But you also realize that when we focus on that generational passing that you talk about a lot, and that really resonated with me from the beginning. Because a lot of the things that, you know, are in your experience, I had in mind too, with my raising and my growing and, you know, the big feelings being shoved down and that kind of thing. So really just being like, especially when I do lose my cool, because obviously it happens. I have a very independent, verbal, tenacious, clever, going on 4-year-old who, you know,
I wonder where she got all that from.
Comes by it all very naturally. So, but not squashing that and not telling her to, you know, I caught myself even like last week telling her to stop crying. And it was like, oh wait, like I'm sorry. But breaking those generational, but when I do mess up, being like, okay, not getting in that cycle of guilt and flogging of myself, I think has really been the one thing that I have to like stop and you know, pat myself on the back, is like shedding some of that guilt and it not weighing me down, and knowing like every breath is anew, you know, like that's really helped.
Amen. Yes. And it really does make it so, I mean, I say this, but I love when other people can share, like it does make it so you're able to try again, right? And it's easier to try again when you give yourself that soft landing. Yay, Brooke. Awesome. I'm psyched for you. And I know that's been a long practice and really, really beautiful. I love that. So yay for the win of self-compassion. And what are the challenges that are arising?
So this also happened on one of our group calls where, you know, again, when you stop in your rational mind and you're like, oh yeah, I can pull at this thread and I know where that comes from. The overachieving, okay, I have this, but I want this. And, you know, the point A to point B is the shortest. How do I get there? And you're like, okay, I found this thing. I'm going to do it and I'm going to be 100% all in. Letting go of that and kind of getting on this path, well, at a later age for me, but working through that calmness and, trying to work on my meditation. And again, knowing that if I'm not calm, then I can't expect her to be. And really putting in the work, so much so that when you get caught in a situation where, maybe it's compiling throughout the day, you've been calm, you've done your meditation, you've done your yoga, you've been calm, you've gotten them out of the house in the morning without, any kind of, rather unscathed, let's say. And, then you come home and it's usually tied with time and having to hurry, or, it being a little bit more rushed than you'd like to, but you're calm and you're like, okay, yeah, we're just going to have a late dinner and we're not going to take a bath and this and that, and we're going to be cool. And instead of getting like, yeah, we're going to be cool, you get this like, but I want to do this and I want to do this. And you're like, okay, I'm going to be cool. And I'm going to not say no. I'm going to say, hey, dude, yeah, I totally get that. Okay, so look, these are the things we need to do before we go to bed. It's just what we have to do. I totally get it, because I don't like doing it sometimes too, because I'm tired and I want to go to bed, or I want to, have fun or watch a movie or whatever. I get it. But in order to do this, we got to do this. Full meltdown, 0 to 60. And I'm like, oh, and I can feel it now that I have tried to start working with those physical sensations and the clenching of my jaw and the lump in the back of my throat, and then my fists actually kind of like tightening a little bit. And I'm like, okay, I get it. When what I was trying to tell her is, hey, because she just wouldn't stop. She was fast. She was fixated on the fact that she, so it was after dinner, and I just needed her her dad had said he would wrestle with her after dinner. But we were running out of time and we got a little bit late, and she needed to, put on PJs, brush her teeth, get ready for bed. Then we could do the wrestling, and then I was going to read her a book. But we had to get those things done pretty quickly so she could do both wrestling and book. Because if we ran out of time, something was going to have to give. So we were running out of time. And I was like, okay, hey, Cece, we got to go. Cece, listen, hey, will you look at Mama for a second so I can see that you're listening to me? And she was like, but I want this book and I want that, and just totally ignoring me. And I got down on our level and I was like really trying to say like, hey, if you would just listen for 1 second, Mama's trying to work with you here. Will you work with me? And she just beelined it to her dad, and he was like, Mama's trying to talk to you. If you would listen, Mama's trying to help. Like we were both really trying just to get her calmly to listen. If she would just stop for a second, I was going to say, hey, you can have both. This is what we're going to do. We're going to do short book, and I'm going to set a timer for the wrestling. Like we're going to do both. Let's just get these few things done. And finally I was like, okay, I guess we're not going to have time, because now we've gone round and round and round about, would you just take a second to listen? And that just went like full fireworks. And so I got her to do those things, and she ended up getting a short book. But again, she was upset and had a hard time going down. And after, because I was short with her when she finally got into the bathroom, I was like, well, sorry, we don't have time.
Yeah.
You
all ran out of willpower and energy there.
Compiling until you finally are like, yep, done. And like how to like navigate that. Because I think that is a consistent battle with whatever it might be, if it's bedtime or if it's the pretend play that we're trying to stop, or like whatever it is, it's the I'm calm. She's not responding. I'm not getting what I need.
Until you're kind of blowing up. Oh, that is so frustrating. I hear you. And that is, And you're like, we can do it. I'm trying to I'm trying to work with you. I'm trying to make it all happen. And please work with me, kid. And then their attention is distracted, and they've got other things on their mind. They've got their own agenda. I know, it's super frustrating. I had a frustrating moment with my 9-year-old last night as we went to bed too. Bedtimes are like one of the hardest times.
I'd say definitely do it. It's really helpful. It will change your relationship with your kids for the better. It will help you communicate better. and just, I'd say, communicate better as a person, as a wife, as a spouse. It's been really a positive influence in our lives. So definitely do it.
I'd say definitely do it. It's so worth it. The money really is inconsequential when you get so much benefit from being a better parent to your children and feeling like you're connecting more with them and not feeling like you're yelling all the time or you're like, why isn't things working? I would say definitely do it. It's so worth it. It'll change you.
No matter what age someone's child is, it's a great opportunity for personal growth and it's a great investment in someone's family. I'm very thankful I had this.
You can continue in your old habits that aren't working, or you can learn some new tools and gain some perspective to shift everything in your parenting.
Are you frustrated by parenting? Do you listen to the experts and try all the tips and strategies, but you're just not seeing the results that you want? Or are you lost as to where to start? Does it all seem so overwhelming with too much to learn? Are you yearning for a community of people who get it, who also don't want to threaten and punish to create cooperation? Hi, I'm Hunter Clarke-Fields, and if you answered yes to any of these questions, I want you to seriously consider the Mindful Parenting membership. You'll be joining hundreds of members who have discovered the path of mindful parenting and now have confidence and clarity in their parenting. This isn't just another parenting class. This is an opportunity to really discover your unique, lasting relationship, not only with your children, but with yourself. It will translate into lasting, connected relationships, not only with your children, but your partner too. Let me change your life. Go to mindfulparentingcourse.com to add your name to the waitlist, so you will be the first to be notified when I open the membership for enrollment. I look forward to seeing you on the inside. mindfulparentingcourse.com. All right. So what's happening is you're in that moment. You're wanting her to listen to you, and so that you can talk to her about how this is going to go, and she's kind of distracted doing some other things. So who has a problem in that moment?
Well, it's me. That's me.
Yeah.
I'm having a problem with her not attending.
Yeah. So it's interfering with your need to be able to communicate with her, and you're not able to just kind of relax and go with the flow of the evening because she's not able to hear you. And you know, if you kind of step back and kind of look at it, we can kind of look at, okay, so you have the problem there. So we know what our tool there would be, like an iMessage, which we can work on. But I think it's also helpful to kind of step back and look at it in terms of needs, in what is everybody what are the needs of everybody in this moment, right? Like, what do you think her needs were in that moment?
I think this is kind of a reoccurring thing where, in that moment, it was we both needed each party to listen and to hear. And I feel like at that point, I had listened and I had heard her say, I want both things. And I needed her to then connect with me and hear me say, okay, how can we do both? Here's how it looks. And I think for me, again, the putting in all the work and knowing, I cannot give what I do not have, and trying to have all these things that then you're working on, but there's not, I can't expect a 4-year-old to give it back to me like I need it, but like, there's no.
Yeah. You're wanting to be heard too. So,
right.
So you have the problem in this moment. So when you have a problem, the tool for that is your iMessage, right? Like your iMessage. So when we look at this moment and and this is great to practice this message for the evening, because they take some practice, right? Like it's not stuff that just rolls off the tongue, right? So and it might be helpful for a lot of bedtime. So if you think about your iMessage in that moment, like, first, how can you go through that? Describing, hey, when you do this, this is how I feel, and this is how it affects me. So give it a shot. What would you give to me as an iMessage in that moment if I'm your daughter?
Um, when you ignore me, I feel unheard, and it hurts my feelings. It makes me sad, which in turn then I can't listen as well because I'm
Great.
hurt.
Brooke, high five, mama. That is a beautiful iMessage. I love that. All right. So crouching down with her, like, hey, when you ignore me, I feel unheard, and I find it really hard to listen to you. I feel really sad too, and it might be very helpful in that moment, because at this moment, like that, like sadness and kind of frustration, that's kind of what's bubbling up underneath your anger. Like anger is like the tip of the iceberg; it's like the top, and underneath is that sadness and frustration. And it would be helpful for you to like allow that to her to see that in your face, like, oh, like, hey, and for you to even say that out loud, like, I feel sad and frustrated. It actually, as you probably know, like it provides some relief
Mhm.
just to even label that right there. So that as you're kind of getting, and that's actually my advice in so many situations when we're getting to the point where we're like, we're calm, we're calm, we're calm, and then we're exploding, is that we want to start to verbalize and verbalize our feelings before we get to that point, right? you know, I'm feeling really frustrated. And um and if you get to that point of I'm feeling, I'm starting to feel sad. So let's take a step back first though. Say you talk to her, you crouch down, you say, "Hey babe, I feel frustrated. I feel sad when you can't listen to me. I find it hard to listen to you." Let's imagine, what do you imagine she might do in that moment?
I mean, currently it's 50-50.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
It's like,
Yeah.
sometimes I get this like amazing, kind of stop, pause moment, and then she will um, hug me, or
Oh.
she'll be like,
Mm.
"Oh, mama, you're sad," or
Mm.
that where you're just like, "Oh,"
Mm-hmm.
and or otherwise, I like last night would have gotten, but this is the book that I want to read. Like
Mm.
she's got that thing.
Yeah.
Um,
Her needs are like are real strong. Okay. So let's say she goes with option 2, but this is the book I have to read. So what tool can you do then? So then she's telling you, but I've got a problem, right? So what do you do when she has a
and
problem?
that's where I would think reflective listening would
Yeah.
need to play a part, and that's
Yeah. So you're
probably
like,
where I'm dropping it, because I'm like, wait a minute, I need this, and then I think
yeah,
that's
so
probably
you
where I'm
haven't
dropping the
kind of
ball.
heard her, right? And that's
Hmm.
what happens in a lot of arguments, is like, he's saying this, but you're not hearing me say this, but you're not hearing me say this, and no one's acknowledging what anyone's saying. And so let's imagine you give that beautiful, skillful iMessage, rock on for you, Brooke Cheney. And then she says, but listen, I really need this book. I really want to do this book. How can you respond to that?
That's when, I hear you that this is the book you want to read, and I hear you that you want to do wrestling too.
Okay, this is the book, and
Hmm.
you want to do wrestling. Okay, got it. And then maybe you pivot back to your iMessage, right?
Hmm.
Um, or you might shift to something more like, I really want that for you too. We
Hmm.
just got, you got to make sure we get these things done first, of course. So when you're in those like tricky situations, it's really a lot of like uh, gear shifting back and forth between like, this is my message, and I'm hearing you too. I'm hearing you too. And this is
Hmm.
hard this is not easy. Like we're talking about like, oh yeah, you're just going to be doing no problem. No, it's
Mhm.
fine. But it's super hard to remember in that moment. But that's why it's so helpful to kind of like take a moment and dissect it and kind of go
Mhm.
into it. So you're going to shift into your message and you're going to shift back into, yep, yes, that book. Oh, I know. Yep. Um, and it's hard when you're in that moment.
So here's something that kind of comes off of that happened too. It's like, so I got her to kind of get to the point of like understanding these are the things that we needed to do before those were going to happen
Mhm.
finally. But in a way that kind of made me feel icky because it was like, now we've lost the time. It's what I
Yeah.
call my mom voice. Like, now we don't have the time to do that. If you would have listened, kind of shaming thing that I'm like, oh, that's not what I meant to say. But, it already came out of my mouth. To then have her do those things because I wasn't going to back down on, again, there's my stubbornness, having her brush her teeth and
Yeah.
wash her hands and face. Like those things were happening. So then I don't know how to, when that next step happens where it's, I hear you, daughter, but there's still not a,
No action.
right. The way that I had to get her to do that didn't feel good to me. It was
Yeah.
more of a threat or
Mhm.
like a angry voice that I didn't like,
Yeah.
that I was
Yeah.
trying not to use.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to say right here though that, you know, yeah, it's wonderful if we can be like 100% skillful and 100% not using our power like all the time. But we're human, and it's really about like the more we can use our skillful communication, the better. So we want to just continue to acknowledge like when we're doing it well, and go for that. But so how to then continue to like hold that boundary, and that's really hard, and that it kind of depends on where that boundary is for you. So for you, that boundary is you want to make sure her teeth get brushed and her face gets washed, and say she chooses not to do those things, not to cooperate that night, then you have to hold a boundary. And this is that tricky spot where you're like this, like, I told you so piece comes in, and if you had done that, then we would have, like, kind of those. And that feeling of like it feeling icky to you is probably a great indicator that it was like it maybe could have gone down a better way in the future, and it's something to learn from. So you can kind of take that feeling as like a teacher, like, okay, what can I learn from here? And sometimes, I mean, I think a lot of time, the learning that we can take from some of those moments is to just like, "Oh, shh." And what I'm doing is, because you guys are on audio, I'm like putting a hand over my mouth. We've got to like shut up. We've got to just zip it, be a little more quiet, because unfortunately, the reality of life is that our kids are going to make stupid choices that we don't like. They have to make stupid choices that we don't like. That's how they learn. That's how they learn best. This is just part of life, especially when you're 4. You make so many stupid choices.
Mhm.
So one of the things that we have to do as parents is kind of sit back and watch our kids make dumb choices. And in as long as like no one's like, obviously we don't want anyone to get hurt, but as far as it goes, you know, getting distracted from teeth brushing and things like that, sometimes we have to kind of sit back and see that, oh, we're going to not have time for this, and I'm going to have to hold that boundary, and that's probably not going to be fun, but it may have been better in that moment to zip it and then have to hold the boundary. Does that sound like it? What are you thinking, Brooke, as I offer this idea?
I definitely think that I'm the daughter of an English teacher and a lawyer. So zipping it is always kind of a challenge. And like I said, my daughter has been speaking in paragraphs since she was about 2-ish. And us not talking, or us not, me specifically not, just kind of closing my mouth, I think is going to be something I'm going to have to try to see, like experiment to see what would happen in that instance, because ultimately she got up and brushed her teeth, and she got in bed, and we did have enough time to read the short book that I told her. And we made time for her and her dad this morning, to have some time together. So, ultimately it worked itself out. I think for me, the difference between, because I was raised in an authoritarian, regime, so to speak, where, I was the baby of 3. I saw what happened when you didn't follow the rules. So I was a rule follower.
Mm-hmm.
My husband was the oldest of 3. He was a total rebel. Never followed the rule, had green hair, like, we're total polar opposites in a lot of ways. To then kind of have that element of how do I hold a boundary compassionately,
Mm-hmm.
Without that horrible "I told you so" kind of
Mm-hmm.
additive. How do I follow through with what I've said that either I'm going to do or that what needs to be done,
Mm-hmm.
without there being that threat or that icky feeling, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
But then also not quashing her independence or not letting her have those big feelings, or, kind of finding that weird balance of
Yeah.
disciplining and compassion, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a beautiful, beautiful question. And you're so, you're right there. And this is really hard. And I think that, and like I said, for me, it's still something, I get challenged with too, is like, how do we not bring the drama, right? Because our kids are going to bring enough drama. How do we not bring the drama? And, and this is something, like I said, like I wish I had practiced this a little earlier in the timeline in my own last night. But one of the things that we want to do in these moments, so say you're in this moment, like she's like not gonna have time for the wrestling, you're getting a little tense and hyped, and you're starting to see that she's not making like the greatest choice or whatever. This is where that like wonderful mantra that is going to come into handy, which is not my problem.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So our kids are going to make these choices. This is not my problem. Right. So you want to, so one of the things that, that even this communication teaches us, like, is that like, it's not interfering with your needs at all in this moment, really, if she makes a choice that you don't agree with, that isn't the best choice. And this is her problem, this is her thing, and she may have to deal with the natural consequences of not having enough time to wrestle, and she might have some big feelings about it, and that's okay. That's not your problem. And we mean, like, this is not my problem in the most loving, wonderful way, but in a way of saying, yeah, okay, I cannot fully control this little human being. She's not a puppet. Can't make her make the right choices. Uh, so when you say this is not my problem, it's a way for you to step back and say, take a breath and just kind of check in with you, and let her make the choices, and let you hold the boundary. And then what that does, if you're able to get yourself into a state of letting go of, what she's doing. You're not responsible for all her actions, but you are responsible, like my friend Hal Runkle said, to her. And if you can get to a place where you want to, and maybe anticipate in that moment, oh man, she's going to be upset. I want to be able to comfort her, even maybe as I hold this boundary, or I want to be able to hold this boundary in a way that isn't mean and punitive, right? I just want to hold the boundary. And I know this is hard because my daughter's almost 13. I've got to hold some boundaries in the face of some snark, and
Mhm.
this happens. So we want to kind of get ourselves to the place where, yeah, this sucks. I hear you. We're empathetically. I know. I wish we had had time for the wrestling. That would have been fun. I know. I know it's kind of a bummer. Maybe next time. You really want to be able to like reflect back to her when she has a problem with her own actions, when she's made this choice. But it's really about kind of stepping back so that it goes into that work
Mhm.
for ourselves, kind of anticipating and practicing in that moment. So I'm wondering for Brooke, for you, what would be helpful for you to help yourself get in a state of like a little bit of a letting go, a little bit of more equanimity, in that state? What would help for you?
Well, it's funny because on the call yesterday, I had my little notes and I literally wrote down in all caps, "Not my problem," underline, like 4 exclamation points. Because again, I come from a long line of self-sacrificing martyrs who had to fix everything. And I do feel that also didn't show their own emotions. So I feel like letting her, like, the problem is, the not my problem mantra is something that I need to really, really focus on. And trying, I think for me, parceling out whose problem it is, like we just walk through. And when you're like, well, whose problem is that right now? I'm like, oh yeah, I would, like, I don't think that way. I don't think about like
Mhm.
her problem, my problem, and the difference between the two. Um, and I know, like, I also wrote, like, I can influence, I can't control. And having that mantra of like, okay, not my problem. But before that, kind of being like, whose problem is this?
Mhm.
And kind of trying to figure out that on the fly, maybe something that I need to like think about prior to, in like certain situations that might continue to be happening. And like, if I'm buying into her
Mhm.
emotions and coming down and getting sucked into the drama. Cause I definitely, my friends call me mama bear for a reason. I do tend to, you know, feel other people's
Mhm.
feelings for myself,
Mhm.
um, and take on their drama and their problems. And so while I think in the past, maybe it was my way to connect to somebody, I'm realizing that it's now to my detriment, that I'm not connecting with myself. Um, and so that mantra of like, not my problem is probably something I need to definitely work
You
on.
could you could write it down on Post-it notes and put it up in your bathroom and things like that.
Uh-huh.
And especially if you're really empathetic and you like feel everyone's problems and things like that, it's really valuable in those moments to like have grounding practices.
Mhm.
Maybe like a little menu of 3 or 4 grounding things that you're gonna be your go-tos. And some of those things that really help are the sigh breaths. They help change the chemistry. Just putting both hands on the floor can be helpful, to take a moment there, right, where you're literally grounding. Maybe you literally just sit on the ground, you put your hands on the ground, and you take some sigh breaths or you take some long, slow exhales, right? You want to have a little practice for those moments. For me, that the sighing it out kind of helps a lot. Um, I I need to kind of take a moment to turn away. I need to take a moment to like duck in another room. Maybe I might shake out my hands and then take some breaths, and then I can kind of step back into it. And that, for me, that really helps a lot, to just take a moment where I'm not in that like space of confrontation. I used to have, when it got really bad, I go outside to this rock in my driveway and I put my hands on the big boulder. um, but for you, Brooke, what might be some practices that you can start to practice and incorporate into these moments?
I definitely think that the grounding and exhaling, and because I definitely feel, again, I've come into that place of, um, conscious awareness and being okay and just sitting in that conscious awareness for as long as I have. It's a little challenging, but to just really feel the breath and feel the ground. And a friend of mine gave me this amazing appetite bracelet that I've been wearing. And so like I've taken a second to kind of rub the stones and just kind of, okay, I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then have that moment. So
another great mantra I like, there's a whole bunch of mantras that you can use in that moment, like I'm helping my child, you could say that, or yeah, not, I think like not a problem, just kind of chilling in those moments. So, think
yeah.
about coming into those moments. And then what that does is as you lower your fight, flight, or freeze response, your stress response, it makes you more available to be that grounding presence for her, because for kids, they get ungrounded. They get into their stress response, and the way that they ground themselves is through us, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we're that grounding force, that's the holding on to you, that touch, all that stuff. And you just breathing with her in those moments is so wonderful and so grounding for them. But it's our job to kind of practice to be that grounding force as much as possible, so that then we can offer it to them through their like attachment to us.
It's so important to remember to, again, I go back to the call because another mom was saying like she was realizing like her anxiety for his anxiety, and then the anxiety about the anxiety was like this cycle of anxiety. And I feel like, especially when it comes to bedtime, it's like I've come to the end of the day. When she goes to bed is when I can do whatever it is. And so it's gotten to the point where now it's late and now it's encroaching on my needs, and, trying to deal with her needs when I'm like in the back of my head, it's going, oh, now it's already 8:30 and you haven't even, she's not even in bed, and, trying to just really realize that the more I'm, it's just going to feed that in her too. And I think just the more I can practice that and just really, and again, that self-compassion piece coming in where I don't do it and I'm like back at her, and then I feel bad when I leave the room, has helped. But sitting in those icky feelings used to not be something I was comfortable with. And just kind of being like, oh, hi there, guilt. Oh, okay. Yeah, that doesn't feel good. Okay. That's been something that I think I wasn't actually aware that I was doing it until something that you said kind of brought it up to me, brought it to my awareness that I was. So working through those, and again, those feelings that I haven't in, my past or in my upbringing been able to work through or even name to tame, I think has been something that I definitely have seen over the past, several months of walking through it, walking through the program together and with other moms. And
yeah. I mean, there's so much learning to do, right? Like that's not something that we can just like dip into for like for a few weeks, and then we're like, I'm good, I'm done.
And you're teaching an old dog, Hunter. You're teaching an old dog. So.
You're teaching old dogs new tricks. Yeah. I mean, all that's like incredible, like shifts to be able to like, even be able to see those things and to be able to sit with those things. And so, you can look at bedtime as like the new frontier. Bedtime is the new kind of place to practice. And I also think, it's helpful, like if you, I know you have your husband there, if you're able to kind of, give each other a break one night where you do some bedtimes and then I do some bedtimes. That's really helpful if, for the listener, if you have that option, could co-parent. But over time, bit by bit, it's like these things will get better and better. It's all the hard work is in the beginning, as it's like it's a lot of shifting and changing, and remembering and practicing language and shifting that in ourselves. And then over time it gets easier, it becomes more of a habit, and our, there's that neuroplasticity, our brains are changing, and our kids become less like, if they're like bumping up against those boundaries again and again and again, and you just hold them with empathy. It's like, well, here we are again at this boundary, and don't make it reduce the drama on your end. Don't make it such a big deal on your end, which can be really hard. I know this myself. I'm not so great at this all the time myself. But the more we can do that, that becomes not an issue after a while, and then a new issue comes along.
Right. I think that's such an important point too, when it comes to like new people in the program, and or even me, like having gone through it once and kind of tagging in to the second round as I can. The idea of like, I'm really trying to work with her, and I'm really trying to give, and I'm really trying to like do all these things to help the family be in a better, happier place, and to be on the same team and to work together and feel like a cohesive unit. And then when I'm constantly getting, the snarky or the back talk or the, not kind words, where you're like, okay, I'm giving and I'm not giving anything in return. Or I'm saying yes, and I'm saying yes, and I'm saying yes. And then the one time where I'm like, oh, dude, I'm sorry. And like, we have to say no to that, or whatever it is, that if there's a, explosion, kind of not feeling like, hitting my head against the wall, or resentful, that I'm like doing all this work and not getting anything in return from my 3-year-old. That logically, when you say it like that, you're like, oh yeah, that's kind of silly. But to be okay with that, to realize like, it does start with me. And if I can't continue through those things, then, we'll just fall back into those same patterns that we've been stuck in.
Yeah. It's important to remember that our kids are like, whatever the habit has been for a while, if you've been, doing all the threats and the orders and things like that, and they're in the habit of resisting that's what they've known for their whole lives, and they're like a train going 90 miles an hour in one direction, it takes a while for that train to stop and turn around. But you've also said, like yourself, like sometimes when you give her that iMessage, she's like, oh mama, and she offers that, so you get those like kind of moments of like, yes, great, okay, she's it's part of it is like, you have to continue to practice, because really the alternative is like, okay, we're going to go back to threats and punishment, and then you just get so much more conflict. And so as we're using that power of threats and things like that, then our kids just become more and more resentful, and we don't have that influence when we might need it when they're teens. It's like that relationship bank account, right? Like we got to be putting in to be able to withdraw. And there's a lot of
and I think trying to have the focus on like, I need to put in my bank too, so that I can continue to give. And then, so those points where I'm like, I have given so much, I am done. That's when it's even more important to stop and do some self-care. And I think I've gotten better at that, because again, I didn't have a model of self-care. I had a, martyr model. And so that is something that I think being new to this and kind of focusing on that has definitely helped in those moments, but I need to do more.
All right. So those little bitty bits of self-care in those difficult moments, think about those times, like, this is hard. Okay. How can I help myself? Right.
Absolutely.
All right, Brooke, awesome. I so appreciate you bringing your challenges and your wins here. Do you have any, we talked about bedtime, which is like the crazy time, and now you're going to go into bedtime with a kind of a different focus. So do you have any takeaways from talking today?
Well, I definitely feel like, even though it was specific to bedtime, that it's kind of a consistent conversation that happens around any activity that has kind of we got to do this before we have to do this kind of thing with her. and that I can try to separate out my problems from hers, and really realize that, not to take on those things and to allow her to have those emotions, but not take them on myself. And that really to continue on the path of, self-care and self-compassion. And to know, it has been this program that is really, even though before I kind of had the idea of practicing and mistakes help you learn and grow. And even though I wasn't raised that way, I had kind of come to that in my adulthood on my own. But to really honor that and to know it as opposed, to feel it in my heart as opposed to just my head, for myself, and have that then be something that I can pass on. And even though at first when the whole I cannot give what I do not have makes me cringe, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there's so much I don't have, aka my pessimist recovery in full effect there, to really know what that means, and to know that obviously I'm not going to have everything. I'm only human. So to hear other moms say the same things and to be supported by other moms, I can't thank you enough for all of your time and effort that you put into your groups and your lessons and meditations and all the things that we have at our fingertips in the group and in online in our forums and everything. It's just it has broadened and tightened this web of moms internationally that when we put our hands in our heart and we talk about the group that's around us and that what we're doing this for, I literally can almost feel and see women and families holding hands around the world, and it's beautiful. And I encourage anybody who's thinking about it to jump in full force, because it is an amazing supportive collective that we have going on.
Oh, so cool. Thank you so much, Brooke. I really, really appreciate you sharing your life, sharing your story. And I know I'll see you again soon. So thank you. Thank you so much for listening. I loved talking to Brooke. She is so such a sweetie and has made so many huge strides in the membership. It has been an incredible joy to watch. So powerful. Just want to let you know that our doors will open and then close briefly. So if you want to get on the wait list and learn more about it, go to mindfulparentingcourse.com. And we're going to be doing a free 10-day Calm and Connected challenge. It is a 10-day free challenge that will leave you calmer and closer to your child so you can have more cooperation, more fun. And that's all at mindfulmamamentor.com/challenge. That's mindfulmamamentor.com/challenge. So I hope you will join me for that. And before I go today, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you'll share it with other people who are struggling. I want to give a shout out to Laura Ty 22, who gave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Thank you so much. She said they're amazing, helpful conversations, and she is so grateful to find the podcasts. She says, "You are my virtual mom tribe." Yay! I'm so happy to be here as your virtual mom tribe. So awesome. Thank you. And thank you so much to Kimbochi, who left a review back in November, and she also left a 5-star review, and she says she is an appreciative listener. And thanks us for the podcast. So thank you. Thank you so much to you guys and everybody who has left a review. I am so glad to be able to be talking to you, sharing with you. We'll be doing even more live coaching and different things like that in the Calm and Connected Challenge. So I hope you'll join me at mindfulmamamentor.com/challenge. And I'm so excited because next week, be sure you come back, because we're going to be talking to my good friend John Duffy, who's amazing, about parenting the new teen. And this is definitely for people with kids of all ages, because it's going to help you know what to look forward to if your kids are younger. So really, really incredibly valuable lesson. You are going to learn so much. So thank you so much for listening. I'm glad to be here. I am glad to be in your virtual parenting tribe. It's so wonderful to connect. Thank you so much for all the kind notes and all the good things. I'm so glad that we are hanging together here in 2020 and beyond. OMG. I'm wishing you a beautiful week. I'm wishing you a peaceful week, and I will talk to you soon. Namaste.